Tussle over rent increment has erupted in an estate in Langata here in Nairobi after the landlord unlawfully issued an order to the tenants hiking the house rent. Desperate for justice, the tenants sought help from the rent restriction tribunal. But as George Maringa now reports, the tenants are counting their losses after goons with orders allegedly from the landlord spilled raw sewage to an occupant's house whose kids were inside.
I read my WhatsApp and I was shocked when I read a message that my house had been vandalized, that some people had come and, broke my window, which you can actually see behind me. They broke the window and dumped in raw sewage. So the place was flooded with sewage. Imagine my kids were in the house, 2 kids, who could not do anything at this point.
When Elisha Arasa moved into house number 2 at Ocean View Apartments in Langata in June, his hope was that this would be a place his family would be happy to call home. Barely 7 months later, his children would call him terrified that some unknown persons had broken the glass windows and were spilling raw sewage into the house. When we get here, Elisha is trying to come to terms over what happened in his house. The stench, broken windows and disorder tell the story of a family that is seeking justice. It all began on the morning of Saturday the 18th of November when the landlord issued the tenants a 25% rent increment notice dated 1st November that would take effect beginning December, barely a 2 weeks notice.
Now, when we received this letter, we immediately convened a meeting the same evening of the entire estate. We discussed over the matter. And we saw that the best option would be to write him a letter, since he approached us with a letter. So we do a letter to him and to try to put some sense into him.
Things got worse when the tenants could not reach the landlord and thus paid the initial amount.
Come on the 5th, which is usually the last day of paying rent, he decided to switch off electricity, which ultimately cut off the water supply.
That is when they sought help from the Rent Restriction Tribunal. In an order dated 19th December 2017, the landlord is ordered, and I quote, to restore all facilities such as water and electricity supply, garbage collection, security and parking services forthwith. The plaintiff, being the tenant, is to continue paying rent as usual. However, on the evening of Christmas Eve, goons allegedly sent by the landlord vandalized electricity supply from the post, as recorded on phone by one of the tenants.
My sons were in the house, 2 children, an 8-year-old and a 13-year-old, called me and told me that the 2 people at our doorstep looking for me. I asked that let me talk to them, and when I talked to them, they told me that they're under instruction from the landlord that I evacuate from the house immediately.
These being a case among many that have seen tenants suffer at the hands of their caretakers and landlords. Kirunyu Karoki, a lawyer, giving tips on the legal solutions one can seek in such a case.
A tenancy agreement between the landlord and the tenant, because then the tenancy agreement or the lease agreement will provide for the notice period. In an instance where the contract itself or the tenancy agreement itself does not provide for a notice period, then a minimum of at least 30 days prior notice, that is 30 days between the date when it was served and the time when the notice will become effective. That is the required period.
For now, taps remain dry while Elisha and his fellow tenants wait for justice, even as their children wait to report to school next week. George Maringa, KTN News.